You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia. I am a self-care specialist as well as a certified astrologer, and every week I come here to share just a little bit from within. Although I will say that's my normal spiel here at the beginning, and this summer I am taking just a little bit of extra time off between episodes. To be honest, I sat down 2 times this week to record and got 15 minutes into an episode and just felt like I was rushing, felt like I wasn't communicating exactly what I said I was going to, or what I intended to, And in the past, when I've done that, I've just kind of pushed them out and said, I have this commitment, I need to get this done, and I've gone on with it. And I don't regret that. I think sometimes that's fine. But in this space right now where I'm really, truly trying to practice coming to this space with intention, feeling like when I'm sitting down to record, it's because I'm ready to share something, I'm ready to open my heart, I have the time and space to do so. It just felt like that was kind of old, rushing through things vibes, and I'm really trying to be intentional about finding wins in this other piece of what I'm exploring right now, and it's challenging. And so I ended up just kind of scrapping those episodes. I'm sure that some of those themes will come up today because that's how life is. But today, it's a Sunday afternoon as I'm recording this. Today has been a very calm and mostly rejuvenating day. I will say that in the last month or so, I can't believe we're already right now, as I'm recording this, it's the end of July. And I can't believe this is here. I feel like it was just yesterday. I blinked and it was this time last month. This whole past month has been a total blur. So much going on in my personal life and in my professional life, and just with trying to establish ourselves in this new hometown that we've recently integrated ourselves into. And it is harder than I ever expected it to be, and also just as hard as I ever could have thought it would be. Is that funny to say that at the same time? Like, in all actuality, it is exactly as challenging as I thought. And in so many ways, there are things that I'm experiencing now that no matter how much I prepared myself for this and anticipated it, actually going through it is something totally different. And this has been a huge reminder for me, this kind of big reconfirming breakthrough that it doesn't matter how much you prepare for something, experience is the only way that can show you what it actually feels like to go through something. And this is something I think it's important to remember when we are listening to our friends and family who are going through something that we've never truly experienced ourselves. Like, of course, we can listen with sympathy and we can imagine how that would feel, and we can lend our compassion and support to those people. But until you've actually experienced something through your own lens, whether it's something that has been painful or something that's been joyful or something that's been hard or whatever it is, you cannot actually totally understand what that feels like until you go through it yourself. And on the other side of that, there's this whole piece to being so compassionate with ourselves when we start to experience the actual pain of what we've gone through. One thing that I really struggle with is I like to be so prepared. I have this weird quirk where I really like to know what I'm about to get into before I experience it. I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but I'll just share a little bit more on this just so you have an idea of what this is like for me. I'm the kind of person that I would almost always prefer to know the ending before I see the movie or read the book. Not that I always spoil myself in that way. There are plenty of times where, it's a lower stakes situation. Like, I read a lot of romantic comedies, and in those, I'm not like, oh, I'm dying to know what happens. But there are plenty of times where if it starts to get really anxiety producing, or if it's something that's like dramatic in any way, I just would rather know how it's going to end I'm just one of those people. And I'm like that with experiencing things too. Like if I'm going to go to a new restaurant or a new yoga class or a studio or something like that, or even a new grocery store, like if I had somebody walk me through exactly what to expect from start to finish, I would feel so much better. In fact, we have an Aldi here in town, and I never had been to an Aldi's before. I'm sure there were some in the Denver area, but I had never been to one. And so on TikTok, there was actually several videos that showed you like exactly what to expect when you get to Aldi and how to prepare yourself and what to do and how the checkout works and all of that stuff. And it made me feel a million times better when I went to Aldi's for the first time. So I share that because I tend to fall into this category where I think if I can research it and know what to expect ahead of time, then I can prepare myself. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that I don't experience major setbacks or heartache or discomfort because I have prepared myself. And I think in some ways, moving across the country, I thought, there is going to be a period of time where this does get hard, or where I do get homesick, or where I'm going to be like, what the heck? Why did I choose to do this? Or, I knew that was a possibility, but I also thought I'm going to go in and I'm going to do everything I can to prepare for this and make sure I am making the best decision I can and that there's no way I'm going to regret this. And I'm going to read on like how to assimilate into a society and how to meet your neighbors. And I'm going to just be so ready and so prepared for this. I anticipated that I would feel, maybe like a little bit of denial at first. And then eventually a couple months later, like it would start to sink in. Like I thought I adequately prepared myself. And I did. And I'm fine with all of that, except for the fact that experiencing those things is something totally different than how you thought it would be. Like I can sit here and say, I thought it would be hard, or I thought it would be sad sometimes, or I thought it would be XYZ. And it doesn't even matter if I am feeling those things. I'm not feeling them the exact way I thought I would feel them, or because of the things I thought would make me feel that. Actually experiencing it is something totally different. In fact, I think the most surprising part of that is like how it'll hit me out of the blue. Dave will say something about home or about Colorado or something will happen, and then all of a sudden like I just burst out into tears. I've never really experienced that before. And now I have this thing, like this little button inside that is tender and is easily triggered. And it's a pain point, even though I am feeling so generally happy and aligned and happy to be here. But the other thing that I didn't anticipate is I knew that getting here would be stressful. And I knew that our lives were pretty stressful going into this, specifically dealing with Dave's chronic illness. And that was so hard. And then moving here, one of the things I was worried about was not having that support system, like not having the close by family network and friend network in person to be here to hold us up and support us as we navigated through some of this stress. And one of the things that I could never have anticipated is that just earlier this month, Dave would wake up one day with a rash on his side. And at first, I thought it was like a scrape. It looked like a little burn, to be honest. Like I thought maybe when he was installing one of our like wall air conditioning units that maybe he like burned himself on some hot metal or got scratched or something. But the next day he woke up and it was like twice the size. And so he went to urgent care, and the physician there was like, yep, this is classic Lyme's disease. You got bit by a tick. And this has been one of my like greatest fears about moving here. Although to be honest, like I probably can't own that completely, or maybe I can, like maybe feel free to share your own thoughts with me on this. But I was terrified of ticks moving here. I know that they're much more prevalent in this area, and I did some research beforehand on like how to prepare yourself when you're going hiking and doing all this stuff. And I do think that on one hand, I did some research and I prepared, but I was also so scared of it that I didn't do the full amount of research because it's so scary that you can really scare yourself. And I think to a certain point, especially when we first got here, I just kind of turned off that part of my brain and like have our dogs on sick medication and, check ourselves or whatnot. But I didn't really think that it could actually happen to us. And so when he came back and he said that, and he's already been dealing with all of these things, these heart issues and neurological issues and stomach issues and chest pain and chronic fatigue and all of this stuff for so long, this is all things that can get so much worse with Lyme's disease. So of course he was able to start a round of antibiotics right away. But this is really, really scary. And the more that we learn about it, and I just spent a couple hours doing some research for him, just trying to educate ourselves. Like, we've been down this path before. And on a side note from all of this, I would say that it's very easy to put your head in the sand when you get scared. I really, really found myself doing that when Dave first got sick 2 years ago. And I think there's several valid reasons why I did that at the time. Is one, I was very afraid, and two, I had the pressure of running my business, and that was completely financially supporting us at the time. And I didn't know how to do that and take care of a sick person and do research and do all of that. And the past 2 years have taught me a lot in terms of truly how to be a better partner, how to be a better caretaker, how to hold space for somebody who's going through this, how to advocate for yourself, how to actually do the research and not just depend on doctors to tell you what you should know, because there are hundreds of thousands of people who die from being misdiagnosed every single year. And there are, like, doctors are humans and they don't always get it right, and they're under a tremendous amount of pressures and things as well. And our system here is very messed up, if you ask me personally. But I share that because I could not have expected that, a couple months into us being here, that would have happened on top of everything else. And it's very hard because, of course, there's like, how did this happen? And trying to find control over this situation. And there's, things like that, especially when it comes to chronic illness or just illness in one person being ill in a relationship. It adds a tremendous amount of a pressure, but also just a very challenging dynamic to a relationship. And Dave and I have had to work extra hard to figure our way through that. And that was a curveball that I didn't see coming. It was also just, and this reminds me of why I started talking about this to begin with, is that it just reminded me that when we got here, I knew it would be challenging. But I don't think I anticipated the way that the stress would actually manifest inside of our relationship. And that's not to say that we're not doing really well, actually. I feel and have felt for the past year, actually, that Dave and I have made such tremendous progress in our relationship. And I'm not afraid or embarrassed to share that I think relationships are very, very, very difficult. Relationships of all kinds, right? Like being in a romantic relationship has so many challenges. There's the challenge of being each other's lover, but also the challenge of being each other's friend, the challenge of being each other's family, chosen family, right? And how do you grow together? And all relationships can be challenging. Parent, child, sibling relationships, like there are friendships, co-working, boss, employee, all of those kind of things can be challenging. Relationships are challenging. But when you choose to live in a relationship and you choose to move through life together, man, that has been something that has, like I said, I've chosen to let it help me grow and know that it's not always the easiest path. There have been a lot of times when Dave and I have looked at each other and we've really had to consider, is this working? And when we moved to New York, I think that was a really big moment for us to really step into how much we've grown in our relationship and how much we truly do choose each other. And that is a conscious act every single day. And one, I think, gets easier the more that you look at each other and listen to each other. And I feel like we're getting so much better at that. We're getting better at that level of communication. But it hasn't been easy. And it took quite a bit of couples therapy back in Denver, and then really trying to get good at identifying what our song and dance is and trying to be more aware of that. And then I think for the first time in our relationship, now that we're here, and some of these stressors of actually, getting into the house and eating really bad food and dealing with all of the illness and just all of the like survival mode that we've been in for 3 months, we finally had to start saying like, okay, what are we going to do about this? Because at first it was just like, hey, there's no other choice. Like, we just have to get through this right now. We just have to get through closing. Okay, now we've been in our house for just a month and we're still figuring out everything and how to financially recover from moving across the country, and how does our jobs work here, and how does the rooms that they're working in, and oh my gosh, like there's this huge yard to have to take care of, and oh my gosh, there's apparently ticks all over your yard. Okay, that's terrifying. Your dogs play out there and you have stuff to take care of and maintain and figure out, and it's been a lot. And I think that initial survival mode was something that I expected going into it, but actually going through it and getting to June, or like especially towards the end of June through July, I think what I've truly been dealing with is just like that feeling of like, I just can't really take anymore. Like, I am at my limit in a lot of ways. And I just feel like pausing there for a moment and just really admitting that, like, I am at my limit. But the difference between right now when I've hit my limit and in the past when I've hit my limit is that so often in the past, I was already going, like 120 miles an hour and hitting my limit. And when you hit your limit at that point, you are just crashing and burning, and the momentum keeps going, right? It's like you just start taking casualties with you and you can't slow down, and it's painful, it's exhausting, and you're not in control. And what I would say that what I've done differently this time is that I've tried to stay in a place where I'm still here. I'm still driving the vehicle, so to speak, that I'm hitting my limits in. And instead of just continuing to go and bust through things, maybe it's like, okay, now I need to pump the brakes. Now I need to slow down. Now I need to simplify. These are some more like, I'm going to pause and actually explain what I mean by some of these things. Okay, so let's start with simplify. One of the things I'm really working on is simplifying things. Okay, I've hit my limit. I'm just going to simplify this. So whether it is going to the grocery store or tackling housework or even yes, actually, yesterday is a great example. Yesterday, we decided to go to this local art festival. And it was something that we were able to take Dave's 5-year-old niece with us to. And I did very little research ahead of time. I did look it up and just see like a really brief description. I knew what city it was in. I knew the address. And that's pretty much it. Like, that's as far as I had really gotten. And I was definitely winging it. Like when we pulled in there, it was just different. Let's just start that. Like, I knew I was moving to a small town, but I don't think I really realized what a small town I've moved to until I went to this art festival yesterday. Because, all I've experienced in my life up to this point are things that have happened like this in Colorado, where art festivals are like tens of thousands, if not like hundreds of thousands of people, right? Even farmers markets are huge every single week inside of any city in the Denver metro area. So I was kind of expecting that vibe, I guess. And so when I get there and I'm like, okay, well, where is it? I'm like, okay, well, there's a little sign. We pull in, and I actually, to be honest, I totally missed it at first because there were like 3 vehicles in this little parking lot, and like a food truck was set up on the side, and I didn't see any tents or any signage or really anything. So I missed it, and I turned around and I was like, I ended up parking thinking, okay, it's just not really here. Like, this isn't a real thing. We got out of the car and we walked down a little bit, and I could start to hear some live music. Honestly, the band that was playing, it was a real thing. And the band that was playing was like a 3-part band. They were so good. The music was awesome. And it was the sweetest, like most earnest little arts festival. It was about like 3 tents big. They maybe had like 7 vendors there. And there was a bunch of stuff for kids. They had like bracelet making for kids and face painting, and they were doing make your own tie-dye t-shirt, and I think there was one more, like a coloring book station that was sponsored by like one of the local history museums, and it ended up being so awesome. But honestly, like the whole time I was there, I just kept thinking, like, keep this simple. You got a 5-year-old with you. You don't have to like have her do every single thing or have it turn out a certain way. Like, just keep it simple. Just float through it. And so while we were making a bracelet, there was a woman who came up to us and was like, hey, like, have you heard of this little museum? And I was like, nope, never have. And she's like, do you know where the hardware store is? I'm like, nope. I'm not really from around here. I'm new to the area. And she was like, oh, okay. So she like gave me like the whole spiel of how to get to this little museum where they were having this scavenger hunt. And it was so sweet. It was just simple. It was like, go to the museum, find 3 different things, and then you can get a sticker at each one. And if you get all 3, then you get to pick out a prize, and you get to pick out like, what else? We ended up going to do it. It worked out really well. She got a free ice cream and some extra stickers, and it was all just super sweet. And we spent maybe like an hour and a half just kind of wandering around and walking up to this place and taking some pictures with her face paint. And it was just simple. And you can see how this is good not only in a situation like, well, any situation all the time, right? It's like simplifying a thing is something we can all use. But 2, it's also a very good tool when you've hit your limit, because you don't have the bandwidth to overcomplicate things. It's like you just have to roll with what's happening. And the more you surrender into that, the better off that you are, right? And another thing that I've just been doing is getting really good at surrendering. And this has looked a lot of different ways. This comes both in surrendering my own expectations and of myself, but also really getting good at surrendering around what I expect out of others, and also how, probably more importantly, how I feel about their actions. So starting with the simple part of that, it's surrendering what I can get done. If I can't get to laundry, that's okay. If I can only get halfway through it and I want to have all the clothes put away, instead of staying up, when I am already like super tired, what I used to always do was force myself through it, push through it, get all of the dishes done, get the laundry done, get the house cleaned. Whatever it had been on my initial to-do list for myself, I would just push through. And now, even though it is driving me a little crazy, I'm trying to surrender on that a little bit and remember that getting sleep is something that I do need right now. And I just went through this like major channel of change, and it is hard to put myself back together, and it's going to take time. And so if during this period of time I don't have the energy to do X, Y, or Z, it's okay. If I only can do it in stages, like we had this room in our house that had been kind of like the crash landing spot for all of these totes that were filled with just odds and ends stuff, like a lot of like computer cables and camera cables and those kind of things. And then just kind of little random things that like part of me is like, why did we even pack all this stuff? Like literally we were in such survival mode when we were packing up that now I'm like, we don't even need half of this stuff. But anyway, I guess that's what ended up coming with us to New York. But for the past few months, we've just had this room that all of this stuff was sitting in. And so last week I was like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to sort it all and I'm going to figure all this out and get a home for it. And so I kind of like did a thing where I like brought it all over to the kitchen table so I could sort it and put stuff in like piles and then figure out where it was going to go. But of course, halfway through that day, I was like, I can't, like I have so much else to do. I had to go grocery shopping. I had to get ready for work. I'm taking this class right now. Like I've got all of this stuff going on. That stuff sat there all week, and every single day this week, I kept beating myself up. Your table shouldn't look like that. Like your house is a mess. Like it's all of these like little negative, like chitter chatter in my head. And I finally was just like, it really doesn't matter. But two, there will come a time this week when it is the right time to get to that. And there came a day, and I got to it, and it all worked out fine. And I love it when that happens, because it's a remembering for me of like, everything does work out in a time. You don't have to hold on so tight to control it. You can just surrender into the process. Just surrender. It will work out. And I will say that that's something that I have chosen to do about those small things. Like that's a very small thing, but also on the big things in my life. Solving problems, right? And I'll just talk more vaguely about this, but it's like, I have to have this kind of attitude right now that like anything that I'm supposed to know is going to come to me. I don't have to fight for it. I don't have to go into hyperdrive, searching for it, demanding it, grasping for it. If I have to grasp to make something happen, it's not what's supposed to happen. And I'm really having to live this right now, because when you are scared, when you are out of control, or you're feeling insecure about something, or you really, really want something to be a certain way, it's very, very easy to hold on super tight, right? Like that is when it is natural to try to have control. And I've experienced this a lot in my life. But whether it is just through wisdom or experience or yoga or mindfulness or whatever it is, I have just gotten to this place in my life where I am trying and living intentionally with this idea and value that I will not force things. If I'm supposed to know something, if there's some sort of information that is supposed to come through, or if there is a certain outcome that's supposed to be a certain way, the best thing I can do is just open my hands, show up, and let it happen. Now, I just have to say, like, it is hard. It is really hard to do that. You know, some people would say, like, putting it into God's hands. I think that's actually like a beautiful way to put it, is like, really give it up to God or to the universe or whatever spiritual practice that you have, religion. And this idea of like, it's not up to you. You don't have to strive so hard. And I think this is super important. It's also important this is what really takes you into the second part of this surrender when it comes to other people's actions or behaviors. I think in general, people spend a fair amount of time scrambling, right? Trying to force outcomes, trying to make things be a certain way, trying to prove themselves. And I'm going to be honest, I fall into this all of the time. I think we all do. This is a normal human thing. But we all know how bad it feels and how often things turn out in the way that we feel like we can control. And so as we start to flip the switch and we talk about surrender and living from a place of surrender up to a certain point, what I've found is that I just have to know what my intention is and know why I've chosen to intend for that. Like, what is motivating me? What is my why? And the more that I am clear on that, the more I can step into this place of knowing what I do want and knowing what I don't want. And the more I focus on what I do want and what is within my control in this moment. And you know what? In all reality, what I can control is pretty small. In fact, you might even say that it's simple. What I can control is very simple. I can control how I react, and I control what I choose to do about it. I cannot control somebody else. I can't control what they're doing, how they're trying to go about something, what they're either telling the truth about or what they're lying about, what they're trying to put out there. I cannot control other people. I only have control over myself. And the more that you, and I'm sure you've heard this before, it's like this is not a profound idea by any means. But I think what we miss is we miss this reminder to truly live that. We all fall so quickly into this idea that we should be able to say what matters to other people, or what other people do, or what other people should be feeling or going for or realizing or choosing or feeling, right? And it's just absolutely crazy, because we cannot control other people. We cannot control what they feel, how they feel, or what they choose to do about it. We cannot. And so we have to stop trying. The best thing that we can do when it comes to our interactions with other people is figure out how we want to be understood and how able we are to understand others. And that gets really into how do you go about doing that. I think it comes down to asking really good questions and staying very neutral and trying to only have those conversations when you can be in a neutral place. So I guess that brings us to the third point, which is just trying to stay regulated. That's the only other thing you can do when you've hit these limits is, what does my body need right now? Does my body need more nourishment? Does my body need more sleep? Does my body need more support? What am I in control of right now? Like, what of this that is around me matters? What if this that isn't of around me, do I have the bandwidth to put out some work for, to try to do something that matters, that will move the needle? And then just remembering that even with all of that, like, this too shall pass. This will change. This will continue to morph. Whether you have done everything or nothing, this will continue to change. And that is the best thing I can do right now. I am trying to live with as much grace as I can. And I actually, earlier this week, when I was doing one of my podcasts that I ended up scrapping, I did this card reading that I'm going to share today as we near the end of this episode, because it's been sitting on my desk and I feel like it is so perfect for this topic. And it's something that I'm probably going to, I actually thought about getting like a little frame for it because I love it that much. It's from the Gabrielle Bernstein Super Attractor deck. And it says, "My greatest spiritual shifts don't come through force. They come through freedom." And I absolutely love that so much. And it's been this like culminating mantra of all of these things that I'm talking about. It is stepping into this place of freedom, of surrendering control, which is also like not forcing things. And it is being open to the experience. So whatever I am actually going through, I'm just feeling it. I'm feeling it for what it is. I'm not trying to judge it against what I thought it was going to be, which again is really hard for me. It's very easy for me to feel like I've done something wrong because I'm experiencing homesickness, or because I'm sad, or because I don't have my house clean. There's a lot of things that will do it for me. But the more that I just remember, like, this has to come from a place of freedom, and the only way I'm going to get through this is to simplify and surrender. Honestly, that's where I'm at right now. Now, who knows? I can say all of this to you, and I hope that this resonates with a bit from within you. But hell, we all know that a week from now, things could get totally turned upside down. I'm going to have this whole other thought on like how to approach and get through life. And I don't think it'll happen that fast, because I just can literally not imagine that. But, you know, eventually this too shall pass and things will change. So that said, I am still just in the sweetness of this summer. I'm really hoping that as we get towards, you know, school year season, like that taste of fall around the corner, that more structure will come. And you know, it will, because it always does. We are in the height. Sun's moving now from Cancer into Leo. This is the astrology part of me that's popping out, just sharing a bit about astrology. Leo is the season of brilliant sunshine, right? Creativity, boldness, maybe a little bit too much pride. But it's time to play under the sunshine, to be creative, to share yourself, to connect with others, to play with fire. I mean, not literally, but just this idea of like, heat things up, enjoy it, like get together with friends, sit around a bonfire, like cook some s'mores, like be there for yourself, put yourself out there, try new things, feel that taste of life. It's not quite time yet to Virgo season, which comes at the end of August, that's when we start to evaluate, okay, how can we think a little bit more critically about what's going on? How can we find some rhythms, some routines to shift things? So that said, I will say goodbye here. I will say that we do have our Patreon up right now. All summer long, I'm doing all kinds of my membership offerings for the base level. So for $3 a month, several yoga classes, and all the ad-free podcast episodes. All of that is available at patreon.com/abitfromwithin at that $3 tier. And then as we move back into some formal schedule and all of that, we'll go back to different tiers. But today, the reason I say that is because earlier today I did a yoga class that was about just a really simple neck and shoulders yoga class. It's about 40 minutes long, and that'll get posted this week. If you're kind of curious, if you've been wanting to maybe try a little bit of yoga at home, if you're looking for a little bit more time for you, or if you've even just been feeling pretty stressed in your own life and could use a little bit of yoga for those neck and shoulders. I've got so many classes in our yoga library, so you can always look into checking that out through our Patreon page, along with ad-free episodes of the podcast, and hopefully soon even more astrology offerings and things like that. But I have to say, I don't have anything quite in mind or planned at this moment, just because I'm like a little butterfly that's in a cocoon. So I'm not even a butterfly yet. I'm just where I'm at. Things are shifting, things are changing, and I'm just showing up, doing the best that I can. I really want to say thank you for being along for today's episode and being on this journey with me, letting me share a bit from within with you. I hope that it has meant something to you. I hope that you continue to choose yourself, slow down, surrender, and simplify. Until next time.